Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us in the second episode of Industry Connects, our podcast where we connect various BIM and non BIM champions locally in Australia and around the world to the rest of the industry. Today, we've got a very special guest. He's a local BIM legend, as I call him. A lot of people call him champion of BIM as well. I have known this guy for a very long time. He's an amazing character and also a fantastic person when it comes to helping others. So I thought the first person I want to get from the local BIM industry on this Industry Connects podcast is this person. His name is Dominic Martens. Welcome, Dominic, to our Industry Connects podcast.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks for being here.
Fantastic. So I was having a chat with Dominic before we pressed the record button, and apparently Dominic right now is in Brisbane. But before we talk about Brisbane, let me ask Dom, where are you based?
Based in Melbourne majority of the time, but do have offices in Sydney and Adelaide as well. So I do get around the countryside a little bit with those offices.
Brilliant. So based in Melbourne, what's the weather like in Melbourne right now?
The weather in Melbourne is horrible from what I've heard. Being in Queensland, it's sunny and 23, 24, so it's actually really nice weather at the moment in Brisbane. So yeah, it's actually a good area to be at the right time. Just yeah, so enjoying it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I was actually in Brisbane last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it was absolutely sensational weather. Between our meetings, I love to walk. So between our meetings, even if it was about 1.5 Ks or whatever it is, I was walking, and Ibrahim, our director, was with me as well. I made him walk so much. So I reckon in 3 days we would have walked about 35 kilometers, which I
Wow.
absolutely love. I love walking.
Wow.
I can't say that about EB though, because he's got a little niggle in his ankle,
He's
so he
back.
wasn't
Oh,
liking it. But still, he didn't back up. He actually walked all the way with me as well, which
oh,
is
nice.
brilliant. Tell me something about the Melbourne weather. So you said it's horrible. For non-Aussies, tell us what the weather is like in Melbourne when they say you could actually have four seasons in one day in Melbourne.
Yeah, so it might be freezing and cold and raining 1 minute, and then 10 minutes later, the sun will come out and it'll raise 10 degrees and be beautiful. The next minute, it's just horrible windy conditions, and it just changes again. Yeah, Melbourne loves to just throw seasons, so you've always got to just make sure you pack a raincoat and a jumper, and you're good to go. And there's some days where it's perfect, and there's other days where the weather doesn't know what it's going to do, and it just changes on you every 10 seconds. So you just get used to it. And yeah, you just have
Right.
to prepare for everything.
That's right, yeah. So I actually went to see Dom and one of his colleagues in Melbourne, what about 3 weeks back? And I
Yep.
remember we landed there on a Wednesday, and Monday and Tuesday, Dom mentioned that it was horrible. It was windy, it was cold, but the 3 days we were there, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was amazing. Again, we walked a lot within Melbourne City and the areas around it, and I just absolutely loved it. But again, because I don't live in Melbourne, so I've got no dramas with that. So tell us, what are you doing in Brisbane right now?
Just up here for some R&R and seeing the fam as of such.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, just taking it easy as of such. So yeah, and we've got several projects going on all around the countryside. So yeah, haven't seen any of the projects yet, but that's the goal at the moment.
Oh, okay, right. Nice, nice. So tell us about yourself, Dom. What's your passion?
So professionally or non-professionally?
Interesting, you should say that because we're going to
We've
talk
got
about
several
both.
professions.
Let's start with non-professionally first.
So non-professionally, I love race car coaching and doing stuff like that. So I've got a few hobbies where I'm a race car coach and teach people how to drive cars and love racing cars myself. And I've been brought up into that from my father, who was
Wow.
heavily into it himself. So yeah, it was a very, very fun and interesting time as of such. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a break. It takes me away from the computer as of such, even though I still rely heavily on a computer for data and stuff like that. But
Yep.
it is a good break to get out of the office and, I mean, go do something that's just takes you completely away from, I mean, in building and technology and stuff like that. You kind of just, I mean, get away and see people and see friends and just hang out and have a good laugh and a good time. So yeah, it's a really good environment to have as a kind of a getaway as of such. So
That,
yeah, I
that
quite enjoy it.
that's fantastic. So you drive racing cars or fast cars, where you are legally allowed to drive them over 200 k's an hour. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. And
Wow.
we even take clients in that same aspect where we can coach them and they can do over 200 k's an hour. Some of the circuits in Sydney and Melbourne, they've got long straights, so we can actually, I mean, turn them up and away we go, and we can actually get the clients doing over 200 k's, which is pretty cool as well. When you're sitting in the passenger seat and the client's doing 200 k's, they get a good kick out of it as well. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Autodesk actually sponsors a local race car here, and sometimes when they're racing in Sydney, we get the invite to go and take a few laps in those racing cars. Not that we are driving; it's the professional driver driving, but we are in the passenger seat. And I remember a couple of years back, I was in that racing car, and it went up to about 310 k's or something on the straight, and the adrenaline rush was amazing. I was thinking that if that's how I feel sitting in the passenger car, what would this guy be thinking or doing or going through as he's driving? But again, you get used to that kind of adrenaline rush, and it is quite natural to you then, and you just get used to it. But tell me about this. Let's say you've been driving these massive or these high spec cars at 200 250 k's an hour, and then you jump into your normal car and on the Melbourne roads. How does that feel like?
Yeah, it feels like you're going slow because you get conditioned to the speed, you get conditioned to just going at, I mean, the maximum the car will take you. So then when you get it back on the road, you look down, you're like, oh, I'm doing 100. Oh, well, that's really slow. That's really like what's actually going on as of such. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those, you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you're only doing 100. But yeah, it actually you get used to it. And yeah, I mean, you just jump on the road and you just feel like you're just going for a dawdle down the road, but you're actually doing a fair amount of speed. But I find that once I've gotten all my speed, my need for speed out of the way,
Yep.
on the Melbourne roads, it's just like I'm just, yeah, I mean, just transporting basically, and I'm just dawdling back, and you're so drained from doing something with so high adrenaline and such a high heart rate for a long time that, when you get back in the car, you're like, oh, I'm actually, I mean, relaxed and reprieved as of such. So yeah.
Yeah. I used to drive a hybrid car, and about 3 years back, I bought this little pocket rocket. It's a turbocharged engine. And within the first year or so, I got 8 demerit points. So for people overseas who may not know about demerit points, so in Australia, when we are driving at and if you make any errors, or if we get caught speeding or something, we not only just get the fine, we also get demerit points. And within first year or so, I got 8 demerit points going from a hybrid to this little pocket rocket. So you just step on the gas and it just flies. So that's why I asked the question as to why, what kind of feeling you have when you're from the race car track onto your normal driving conditions. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
So
you
that
get used to it.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's your non professional passion. We'll come to your professional passion a little bit later in this podcast. But what I want to ask you next is, what do you like to do in your free time other than driving fast cars?
I'm kind of a geek for technology, even though we don't really want to talk about technology, but I love the new innovative technology, things that can help people, driving change. It kind of ties in with my work with some of the hospital work and just helping people as of such, and how new technologies implemented well can, I mean, help people with disabilities, help people's lives and stuff like that. So, yeah, if I'm not at the racetrack, I'm usually trying to think of new and cool ways that we can implement technologies for different applications and for different people. So, it's yeah, there's a whole lot to that. It's not just a simple two-liner. It's yeah, there's a whole lot of things tied into that. Working with some cool people, doing some cool things. With 3D printing concrete and how that could be interacted in, I mean, small low socioeconomical places where there's like a hurricane going through or a cyclone, and you know what I mean, building a concrete box so that they've got
Wow.
somewhere just to you know what I mean, keep shelters of such, and very low cost. And they're not fully automated in by any means. They still need operators, and they have to place the rebar manually. There's a whole lot of things around stuff like that, but I'm always trying to help people in that kind of technology sense in, you know what I mean, how can this help? You know what I mean, 3D printing hands for people who've lost limbs, especially for little kids and stuff like that. So if there's anything that can be done to help and choosing technology, and a lot of people go, I don't know how to do that. And I've got the expertise and know how to do that as of such. So yeah, it's a little bit hard as of such, and it can be a little bit problematic. So yeah, it's quite interesting as of such. And so yeah, it's a very interesting and enjoyable time as of such. So yeah, um, makes a whole lot of fun. Oh, and we got a fire drill going on. Great timing. But yeah, driving technology is one of those big things that I can see a lot of emphasis in it, and I think that there's a lot of companies that could be not necessarily helped, but could drive a lot of change if they use technology well. There's a lot of places where I see a lot of redundant work, double handling, and vice versa, where, you know what I mean, if you had a bit of smarts and a bit of doubts about it, you could actually change and actually get a lot more profitable and a lot more free time. And, you know what I mean, everyone goes, oh, if you get free time, then you can do more work. And I'm a believer of, you know what I mean, that work-life balance. And, you know what I mean, if I get some free time, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm going to go, you know what I mean, do something with cars, or, you know what I mean, go look at something else, or what are the next bits of technology that can help us do stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Interesting, you were talking about your partner walking. In the middle of pandemic, well, actually, we shouldn't be using. So this is what we decided in the last podcast with Janice, that we are not going to use the term pandemic or COVID at all. If I do that next time, I'll have to put a dollar coin in the jar that we can
The
just
swear
use to
jar.
buy some beer. Yeah. So in the middle of that situation,
Hmm.
when my son actually only had to home school only for about 6 weeks, but then he would just walk into my room and start asking me questions and so on, even if I'm in the middle of doing something. So I asked him, I said, if you have to ask a question of Miss Donaldson, do you just walk up to her and ask question, or do you raise hand? And he said, I actually raise hand. I said, next time when you walk into my room, raise hand that you've got a question. I'll finish what I'm doing, and then I'll answer your question. So do not just walk in and start asking questions.
Uh,
Okay, Dad, all right. But we've had this funny stories. Like sometimes he walked in with me in the middle of a presentation or something, and I would just get him to come on the camera and say hi to everyone, because
yeah.
everybody's in the same boat and everybody understands that. Till the time he is wearing clothes and everybody else is wearing clothes, everything is fine.
Yeah, we've had some funny situations like that in some of the meetings with my work, and yeah, like babies start crying. It's
Yeah,
just like, all right, well, that's just life. Go be a dad for a minute. We'll,
exactly.
we'll wait, and just you've got to just have that flexible
Absolutely.
arrangement where you just it is what it is, and you've just got to be able to adapt and change to it as of such. So, um, yeah, it's not necessarily enjoyable, but I think it's just life and the way
Correct.
that the situation unfolded. It, you know, what I mean, for us, it you know, what I mean, as for a business, we were very successful out of it for what we do. So it helped, and you know, what I mean, there was big losers and big winners from it all, but we tried to help as many people as possible with the situation. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, if you, whenever you get the opportunity to travel overseas, what's your first overseas vacation that you want to take, and where?
I want to go back to Japan
Back to
just before
Japan. Okay.
the situation hit, as of such.
Yep.
Try not to put the money in the swear
Yep.
jar.
Yep.
I've got
Yep.
enough beer to buy. I was in Japan on a skiing holiday. And I either want to go back to Europe and see my family, but I don't think that they will have it under control in the next year or so. Kind of, I've got a lot of family there and knowledge there, and you know, I mean, go back to Holland and Germany and seeing a lot of my family. I don't know if they're going to be in a better place. But yeah, I really want to go back to Japan. I think that they've got, yeah, I mean, I was really hoping to try and get across there for the Olympics as of such. But I don't think that'll happen. I think that that's kind of a really weird situation that they've been put in with that and the situation. But yeah, I'd love to go back to Japan and do some more skiing and, yeah, I mean, hopefully not this Christmas maybe, or maybe it's next Christmas. We will be able to go do some skiing and get out and see some of the lovely Japanese countryside because it's a really beautiful, peaceful place, and the Japanese people are just amazing and most hospitable people I've ever met. Like I've got a funny story. My sister lost a wallet in Japan, and no money was taken, was left in a just a small little shop. Homeowner, the lady who was running the shop kept it beside her counter, and then they saw the quintessential Australians walk back in, and she's like, "Oh, here's your wallet," and she was frantically panicking a lot about it all, and just and yeah, gave her a little koala with a couple of yen in it. She
Oh.
was so thankful and just so amazed. And yeah, I compare that to traveling in Europe or America or somewhere like that. That wallet was gone. Like there was no getting it back. But in
Well,
Japan,
well, actually, I've had some really good experiences in the US as well. I've left some stuff, and you go there and it's still there. So I reckon you're right. Japanese people are amazing. My son's school has got a couple of sister schools in Japan, and
yep.
about 3 years back, we hosted a couple of actually two different sets of girls at our home. So they
Yep.
were here as exchange students, but for a very short period of time. So the first couple of girls, they were about 11, 12 years of age. We hosted them for 5 days. The next couple of girls, we hosted them for about 8 days. But you're right, amazing, amazing uh, people. The best part is the first set of girls that we hosted, they knew zero English, absolutely zero
Oh wow.
English. Now my son does karate, he does Japanese Kempo karate, but all he does, knows about Japanese is counting in Japanese. That's it. But the funny part was, so two girls, 11, 12 years of age. My son was about 7 at that time. And by the end, not by the evening of first day, the
Hmm.
three kids, so two girls and my son, they were laughing out loud, telling each other jokes. I don't know how they were communicating, but it was sensational. It was amazing to see how they were talking to each other and they were communicating with each other, telling jokes and laughing out loud. So it
Oh
was
wow.
really funny. It was really funny. Okay, so coming back to a professional side of the story, right? So what's your
Hmm.
current role?
My current role is design technology leader at Silver Thomas Henley, which is predominantly health based focus. So we only look at hospitals, hence why I was saying before. The situation helped our company out quite a lot because there was a whole lot of hospitals where they were not quite getting funded, but with the pandemic and the budget and the spend as of such from the federal government, there was a lot of money spent on infrastructure in the hospital and the health sector. So a lot of our projects got funded, and if not, got more funding, which is really, really rare and really, really odd in the was such a weird time as of such as I put it.
All right. So as part of technology leader, so you basically take care of all the technology related stuff, not only within your company, but also helping other um, partners and clients as well.
Hmm.
So I want to actually quickly tell a story here. I remember this time about 3 years back. You and at that time Mark Saunders was there. So you guys sent
Hmm.
me to this hospital, Hornsby Kurungai Hospital, and
Yep.
basically to help them set up the VR stuff, virtual
Yep.
reality stuff. And there was this gentleman. I'm not sure if he was the construction manager or the project manager there. This guy put the goggles on and he was flying through the hospital like one of the best gamers. And I said,
Yep.
man, I'm 100% sure you play video games till 2 in the morning. And he said, I have never, ever, ever touched this console that he was using. And I said, then how are you so good with this stuff? And he said, because I know the hospital as the back of my hand. Because
Oh
he
wow.
knew the hospital so well, he was flying through the corridors where he had to go. He was going through the operation theaters and all that stuff. Like he was as if he was a gaming champion or something. But what he told me was the fact that he was able to use the technology to understand things that he did not really. He said, I knew the hospital, but I did not know from this perspective. So he told me that he was actually standing at the corridor, and in some cases, when the doors open and close, he had to make sure that you had certain line of sight in that corridor. And he said there is no way we would have been able to figure it out without a technology like this. And he said,
Yeah.
I cannot wait for the doctors and nurses to put the goggles on and immersify themselves in that environment and have a look. So that was amazing.
Yeah. VR has been quite helpful in user groups, and when we meet with the doctors and nurses as such to look at their spaces and actually being able to show them in 3D. We've done some work with big plans where they projected onto a big
Oh,
space
yeah.
so that there's a couple of people who had uh, not claustrophobia. I've forgotten the other one, the opposite to claustrophobia. When they put on goggles, they start to have a medical event. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah, yeah.
like, all right, well, what other technologies can we look at? So we looked at a company called Big Plan, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
have a whole lot of projectors and a white floor, and we bring a whole lot of medical equipment into it and simulated rooms, and we could show them quite quickly through, through our technology that what we were designing was best fit for the purpose, and what they were wanting wasn't best fit for the purpose because they just wanted everything in the room, and sometimes that's not the best solution because
Correct.
it clutters the room and there's not enough space to work. And we had a long chat about doors and opening doors and where that door for an ensuite should be. And I was talking to a nurse, and they said, if it's up against the wall, and they're 100-kilo gentlemen, and I've got to do resus, I've got to get them out of the bathroom,
Yep.
basically the wet area,
Yep.
into there, and then I've got to get them onto a bed, and then I can start doing the resus period. And if it's around a corner, that creates another challenge of trying
Correct.
to get them up and out. And it was really interesting because a placement of a door doesn't seem like a big thing for an architect or for an engineer or for anyone designing a hospital, but for a nurse, where that door is, especially for an ensuite, can be the matter of life and death. And
Absolutely.
till people understand that what they're actually drawing has a consequence to the people that are using it 10 years down the track is such a major event as of such, and such a major um, problem and idea from it all. So it's very interesting and very profound when you have those kind of effects as of such. So yeah, um, very very interesting, very very profound as of such. So yeah, it was quite interesting, and you don't get that necessarily that interaction every day. So yeah, again, technology is changing the way we design hospitals. It's changing the way we do things, and just changing the way we go about everyday lives as such. So yeah, quite powerful, quite cool.
Fantastic. So, our viewers slash listeners, I just want to tell you the first time I actually ever met Dom was at RTC. So now it's called Built. It used to be called
Yep.
as RTC. And RTC used to have this little booth for all the latest technology stuff and so on. And Dom was showcasing some VR stuff at that time. And Dom, how tall are you, Dom?
6'4".
So, Dom, imagine a 6'4" guy. He had the goggles on and he had two controllers in his hand and he was playing some kind of game. So no, he wasn't showing any BIM technology or anything else. He was playing a video game with the goggles on where he was, I don't know whether he was smashing some objects in the
I think it
space or
was
something.
sword fighting or
Sword
doing
fighting, that's right.
something.
Some sword fighting, I can't remember. And imagine a 6'4" guy with two controllers in his hand and trying to fight someone. And that's the first time I saw Dom, and I'm thinking to myself, man, who's ever this guy? He's having fun. You
You've
remember?
got to
Yeah,
you've got to enjoy those kind of
exactly,
events. And
exactly.
I really liked when Wes would bring out the new technology and would say, here's the new Kickstarter thing that I bought. Here's the infrared keyboard that was one of the things I remember using. And and like I think that whole VR space was very interesting to be done. I'm not. I have a very unique, profound look at it now because it's good for some aspects, but then there's other aspects where I wouldn't use it.
Sure.
Doing a lot of race car driving and simulating driving and stuff like that. Someone goes, "Oh, you must love VR," and I was like, "I actually don't use VR anymore," and they're like, why? And I was like, because I can't see the clarity of where I want to look.
Yep.
And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, let's look at a VR headset. They don't have very high definition LC panels for the things that you're looking at. So when I'm looking 500 meters up the road and looking at my next point that I want to look at in a racetrack, it's a dot, and
Yep.
you can actually see the pixel in the VR headset.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not a clear marker as of such. It's not a clear thing. And that to me is, yeah, I mean, you can actually define the dot that you're looking for. And because it's so close to your eye, there have been some companies that have come up with higher resolutions, but they still have latency problems. And you know, I mean, in 5 years' time, I reckon that we would have solved all of it. But at the moment, there's a huge challenge because there's a tech, I think there's a chip. I'm trying to remember what it is. Yeah, there's a chip problem or there's a chip shortage in the world due to China not producing enough chips for everyone. And so there's cars in the US sitting around doing nothing. There's a whole lot of products. You can't get GPUs or graphics units anymore because they're just there's no chips to drive them. And so, yeah, there's a real shortage of such in the worldwide market at the moment. So I think everyone's just got to take a little bit of downtime and just relax a little bit and let them catch up, and then everything will go back to normal. But yeah, it's depending how much we actually rely on the smallest component in technology that's crippling the whole industry. Cars sitting around in Detroit, I remember, or seeing some photos, and yeah, they're waiting on a 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter chip that drives the central processing or the ECU as such, and it's crippling the car industry. It's just like, well, yeah, I mean,
Wow. So
it's
one
profound
mil
that
by 1 mil. Wow. That's
chip,
sensational.
and
And
they
here,
might have like 50 in that ECU, but someone said, oh, can we just go somewhere else to get the chip? It's like, well, there's only one supplier of it. They have a corner of the market, and they've had a corner of the market for 25 years, and it's never been an issue. As soon as there's a situation,
well
yeah,
played.
it's then changed. It's then changed. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, well, now we're really dependent on it. Now it's really becoming an issue.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, oh well, crazy. So yeah, fun times ahead. Fun times ahead.
Yeah. All right. So tell me, how long have you been associated with the technology, especially if we talk about the technology that you use in your work? How long have you been associated with that?
With Revit as of such from Autodesk, I've probably been using it 15 odd years now. I was been using it in school. Was probably
Wow.
um, when I first got my hands on it as of such, and I used it and was a profound user of it all. I worked at South Bank. Sorry, I was learning at South Bank TAFE, and I was a big driver of them getting onto Revit because I could see the industry use of it. My graphics teacher from my high school actually put me onto Revit. We were using AutoCAD at the time, and he's like, "Oh, we've got access to this Revit thing. Do you want to have a look at it?" And I said, "Yeah." I always like looking at things and liking things and stuff like that. And we started playing around with it, and I think it was like 7 or Revit 8 from
Yeah.
memory. So really early on, and yeah, I was like, "Oh, this actually, I mean, this actually seems quite interesting." And the whole placing a door in 3D and you move it, you don't have to move your CAD plans, and we're like, oh wow, this actually has some legs. All Imperial content at the time, but we actually had some very interesting chats, and I was only I think 13 or 14 at the time, so really still young, but just didn't accept that 2D was the only way that you could draw a house or document a house. And so, well, what can we do with this? And then we started really, pushing the boundaries. And I was learning Inventor at the time as well. When I started coming to the content creation side of Revit, I could see how they were almost not linked, but they've taken the same design cues from Inventor and use that in the Revit family creation. Don't have the full suite, the full power of Inventor as of such, but the basic building blocks are very, very similar and very, very easy to understand. And pardon me, with that information, I was then be able to, transfer it across and process it across as of such. So yeah, it was quite useful. So 13, 14, 15 years I've been using driver and technology, and I hate doing redundant work. It's one of my things that really pees me off. Someone goes, "Oh, I've got this design. I've done it in X software." I'm like, "But how does that integrate to what we're doing?" "Oh, it doesn't." "Oh, well, why are we doing it then?" Like, well, "Oh, it's the only program I know how to use." I'm like, but again, did you think about anyone else? Like, you're being very selfish at the moment. I'm like, it's okay. Like, I can work with it, but we got to. Is it IC? Is it some kind of, different format? Do we have to go into a third-party application to bring it in? And once you show them that that's how it's got to be brought in, and this is what we're doing, and it's very interesting. Also teaching uni students about their forethought of what design programs they want to use. Because teaching and lecturing on a couple of classes, I say to them, I was like, what do you want to be doing? Yes, you want to be an architect, but where do you want to go? Where's your trajectory? Like, have a think about it now, because you're still in school. You can change it at any point in time. You're not committed. You're not locked in. You're still learning. If you want to go do IT, well, go do IT. If you want to go do this, go do this. Like, you can have both right now. And a lot of them, I just want to do facade design. I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, I know Rhino really well. I'm like, okay, cool. But do you realize how many times people do facade designs in an architectural office? It's maybe one day out of the year equivalent. Like, they'll do facade designs, and that's it. That's all they get. They'll do one big, hospital, or one big facade, or one big tower, and you'll do facade design maybe once, and then you'll look at the intricacies of it, and then that's it. That's the design massing done. So, is X software good for that? Yeah. But is it what you're going to need to do the documentation of it? Probably not. So, and then I say, here that it's usually between Revit and ArchiCAD are the two big softwares, and I say, here are the firms that use each software. Here's, who uses what, and they're like, oh, why is no one talking about this? And I'm like, well, you've got to ring and ask. And I've been in the industry 10 plus years. I kind of know what firms use what, and I've had that conversation with BIM managers and people at those companies, and I understand that they use either Revit or they use ArchiCAD, and each, like, I'm doing a talk later in the year with a heavy ArchiCAD user about Revit v ArchiCAD, and doing that talk actually opened me up to, not being closed-minded about ArchiCAD, but it's funny, we've almost flipped, and I'm like, oh, ArchiCAD's really good at using this, and he would be the one saying Revit's really good at using this, and we're like, it's just, you look at it from an industry perspective, and if you're not narrowed down and choosing one side, you actually come up with they're both good for certain applications. There's one where one's clearly a winner, and there's another one where there's another clearly winner. But as we say, there's a point where Autodesk did something really smart in the early industries, and they gave it free to all students. And by doing that, a lot of the industry, especially the students and the younger population coming through, know it to a certain degree, so they can use it. Whereas there's not that freeness from Graphisoft as such. So therefore, they lost that kind of little bit competitive edge in the younger market. But it's like really funny. My partner knows ArchiCAD, I know Revit, and it's just chalk and cheese there. So it's really funny, and I understand both applications do different things, and it's actually really interesting. And as I said, I don't choose one software. We predominantly use Revit at Silver Thomas Henley. We use a couple of other programs as well, but our predominant solution is Revit, just because of its integration into other things. But if someone's using ArchiCAD and they've got a problem, it's the same. We have the same industry problems in technology in both platforms, whether it's A or B, basically.
Yep. Interesting. We were talking about the weather. Sydney's weather is like Melbourne today. When I woke up, it was cloudy, and then when I was driving to work, it was bright and sunny, and now it's dark and gloomy and it's raining. So maybe the weather knew that you were going to be online today.
It just knew there was a Melbourne person speaking. It's like, 4 seasons in one for Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But we've been blessed. Like, I reckon this autumn, that I was telling this to Janice also the other day, this autumn, I reckon, is one of the best autumns I've seen in almost over a decade, I would say. It's been amazing, except for today, obviously, because it knew that somebody from Melbourne's going to be on podcast today.
Yeah.
All right. So, talking about your role and the projects that you've been involved in, what was the most challenging project that you've been involved in till date?
Probably the most challenging is probably Tweed Valley Hospital.
Oh, yeah,
the Tweed Valley Hospital in northern New South Wales on the Northern Rivers. It's just, there's a lot of different opinions, even from the locals. My partner's family is actually from the Northern Rivers area, so I get it firsthand from people, not just secondhand. And it's one of those hospitals that, because of its situation, it's actually in New South Wales. Yep. We had border closures, we had all these things that were going on, and a lot of the design teams from Queensland, and a lot of the engineering team and services consultants are from Queensland. So it was very interesting in how the project was run and how it was going around, because just its location, it's on the border, and then accessing it during the situation wasn't a good a good time
Yep,
either
yep,
because they weren't allowing people backwards and forwards, and you need permits and troubles, and then um, just with the time frame with that hospital as well, it's tight.
yep,
It's there's a lot of pressure on from um, New South Wales Infrastructure
yep,
Health HI to get that done quickly because it's needed, and
yep, yep.
it's very much it's going to bring a lot of specialist places into one hospital as such, because in that area there's a lot of individual hospitals that might do cancer treatment or pediatrics, or and they might have to travel an hour from where they are to go access it, or go to Queensland to get that treatment, and it's not really what New South Wales Health want to do. They kind
Yeah,
of want to centralise it so that it's one place as of such, and you don't have to go across the border to the Gold Coast to get medical treatment, which is
correct.
kind of a really nice thing. And
Yeah,
there's people in like a little bit further down, maybe Ballina, or a couple of hours away, where their closest treatment is in Queensland, not in New South Wales,
mm,
which is can make quite decisions quite hard. And
exactly.
there's a couple of times during the situation where there was situations that where the pandemic had caused us, people weren't allowed to travel, and kids were involved, and they were getting quite sick, and there was just things. If the hospital had been built 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been a problem or a
Sure.
headline, because they could have gone somewhere else. But they were stuck in this no man's land, and
Yeah.
it's really hard. But from a technology point of view, it's just been a challenge. It's the first time we've used. It was the first project we'd used BIM 360 from start to finish, as of such. It's not
Yep.
finished yet, but it's always on that platform.
Yep.
Rolling through the evolution of BIM 360 and its challenges with yourself, Deepak, has been interesting and challenging, and trying to teach everyone on that sphere, because I think it's a lot of time. A lot of the services engineers are using it on such an early stage, because we're in construction at the moment. We're pouring concrete. We're still delivering deliverables through the whole process. We haven't quite finished DD yet, so there's this hesitance of, we're pouring concrete, so we've got to get it right now.
Yep.
We can't wait, and that timeline and that stressor of the construction phase and getting it done ASAP is
Yep.
it's been a challenge. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So two things. One, you got to put a dollar coin because you actually used pandemic word, so that's a
oh
dollar
man,
coin in the jar. But the
damn
second thing is
it.
interesting. You should mention about Tweed Valley, because for our viewers and listeners, I just want to mention that Dom and I we proposed an AU 2021 class where we want to talk about the lessons learned mainly on the Tweed Valley Hospital. We called it as building a $673 million hospital in the middle of a global pandemic. Now, in this case, I'm
Epic.
allowed because it's
It's
the
the
name
name
of
of
the
the title.
class. So,
Yeah,
but Rick Notary was the BIM coordinator on that, who works
still
with
is.
Dom, and Rick actually worked so hard on that project, and I'm pretty sure so did everybody else. And I remember getting calls from Rick really early in the morning or late in the evening, where things haven't worked the way they have, and so on. The best part of this was, we provided a bit of support to Rick, and obviously Dom being involved in that, they he was really heavily helping Rick, and not just Rick, the other teams as well. But the fact that if that class gets accepted, we definitely want to tell Rick's story, obviously, and Dom's going to tell all the other details as well. But I reckon if it wouldn't have been BIM 360 design for that matter, and I'm not, obviously, I love cloud technology, but I reckon BIM 360 design definitely helped a lot, which is now called
It,
BIM Collaborate Pro. But it definitely, the cloud work sharing helped a lot.
I don't know whether, like, I look at Revit, the Revit server, I think it was, and I don't think we would have been able to implement it on
Yep.
it. Just the amount of changes and what was going on with it, it would have been quite challenging.
Yep.
Um, but so I really think, having it on BIM 360 and it's challenges, because we're doing a joint venture with BaitSmart. So, the likes of Aaron and Serge are obviously a big part of it as
Yep.
well. They're doing certain percentage of the hospital, and we're doing the other percentage of the hospital. They're looking after the facade and external works and front of house items, which is what Bates are currently working on. We're, doing the hospital and health planning, which is what we're fundamentally good at. And having that on BIM 360 allowed for us not to be in one office as such, have a side office, and then, through the pandemic, or sorry, during the situation,
That's $2,
another
right?
coin. Yeah, I'll be buying a beer shortly. It's just, it was the only way we could really get that project to be proficient as of such. If we had to shut down and we're working on someone's server or vice versa, and then having all to work remotely, we had other projects that were in that situation, and it didn't work for them. We had to, spend the time and spend the money with Autodesk buying more cloud licenses, because it was the only way we could see for that, especially us in Melbourne. We were locked down for quite a long time. Having that be proficient for everyone to work. So, a lot of people at home, when they were trying to remote in and work remotely, and that system, it didn't work well. And speaking to other firms who didn't go to the cloud, they're like, oh, we'll just wait. It was kind of a hard situation for them, because I could see their latency had caused more problems rather than what we said at SDH is like, all right, what's it going to cost? Let's think about that. All right, it's going to cost X. We need so many more licenses for so many more staff. Do it. Let's spend the weekend uploading all projects to the cloud. Let's just get everything up there, and we'll just, it's going to save us time in the long run. So let's just eventually spend that money. And I was very thankful for the directors that saw that, it was helping us with, I could show the statistics between it not on the cloud and it on the cloud, and how much proficiency. And then I had, I had a couple of users come and speak to them and say, this was the case, and it was just a headache as such. And they're like, all right, cool, good, let's do it. And they were, they were all for it. And I think a lot of architecture firms through the situation changed their methodology of working. I think there was a real hesitance in the industry to have people working at home. They're like, if you're working at home, you're just watching Netflix and not really doing work. Whereas nowadays they can, not necessarily trace and track you, but they can, if you're not online, you're not communicating. There's so many more tools with Microsoft Teams and vice versa through it all, that you're always contactable, and you can always be in charge and work remotely. And especially with the cloud, I can log on and work on Tweed, whether I be in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, or wherever I may be. I can always go in and help my staff members and resolve a problem, or, hey, it's not a problem for me, so, it must be a machine problem or a computer problem, or something you're doing. So let's try and think about it and resolve it and issue it. And it tapped into where we had a couple of projects that had not necessarily finished up, but just were a little bit quieter. We could then get more people onto the project and basically help out Rick as such, because I feel sorry for Rick. He does a lot of late nights. He works really hard on that project. He's absolutely killing it. I'm very thankful that we have him on it, because without him on it, I'm sure that project would have fallen over by now, and we wouldn't have met half the deadlines that we've met. And Rick does some awesome work on the project. So I've always got to thank Rick, and I'm very thankful that we have him on the project, because there was a few times where I was like, I was very hesitant, and then Rick's like, no, I got this. I'm like, okay, you sure, Rick? And he's like, yeah, I've got it. And then by sure, it might have been 12 o'clock at that night. He's like, hey, I've got this done. This is the problem. This is the sticking point. Or I get the phone call before you maybe be back saying, Bob, it's done this. It's not, it's not transmitting, or it's still uploading. What are we going to do? And I'm like, just got to wait. Just write the email and say, hey guys, it's uploading. Take a screenshot of where it's uploading and just go, that's where it's at. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry. But he's definitely earned his wages on that project for sure.
Absolutely. I remember, we've talked about this quite a lot, where I provided quite a bit of support on this project, but only, I would say, about not even 10% of the actual time I spent was related to Silver Thomas Hanley queries. It was mainly from other other partners, and Rick. I felt really bad for Rick, because Rick was under the pump. He being one of the leads on it, because you were looking after some other projects as well. He being one of the main leads on it, he used to get swamped with all these emails and phone calls, and it was not really his job to do that. But anyways, I totally agree. Rick did a fantastic job, and I keep mentioning this, that he did a brilliant job on this project, and you guys as a team did a fantastic job as well. And thanks. I want to say the same thing to Sergio from BaitSmart as well, and Aaron, because I used to get calls from Sergio as well. And most of the time, Sergio and Rick, they were on the same page. Obviously, you would always have difference in opinion on the things, and
Yeah.
this is the best part of this industry. But at the same time, their main aim was to get the project finished on time and done right. And most of the times they were on the same page, so it was fantastic. So tell me, what's one of the most challenging projects you're working on right now?
Right now, there's a few, but it's still due to Tweed being almost near that finishing
Yep.
point. There's a huge driver. It's like we're on site, they're pouring concrete, and we still haven't quite finished DD just yet. So there's a few bits and pieces there where it's still to this day it's a real big challenge, and it will be a real big challenge till we get to the point that we've finished it, just because of its timelines, its deadlines, and the deliverable, the client, the builder. They're all really pushing for it to get done as quickly as possible because it's needed in the industry. It's needed in the area, basically. And yeah, but there's a few others. There's Baringal. That's going through the same kind of process where it's quite busy. There's Royal Hobart ICU expansion that we're doing. Again, really interesting, challenging joint venture again. And there's a few new ones I can't quite say, but they're another joint ventures with other companies, and just trying to work out those differences of opinions with JVs are always a big challenge, and they need a lot of time up front to say, all right, what standards, what templates, what content, and trying to get all that aligned in two different companies from two different aspects from it.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I mean, we use Dreyfus quite heavily at STH, which is another software, another bit of technology, and then making them aware that that's a requirement for some of the New South Wales health jobs, that they have that information database management solution on top of it, and saying, well, okay, we're doing this, this, and this. Yeah, I mean, here are options, because I'll use whoever's content, I'll use whatever, but I don't want to redo work. And I said, well, yeah, man, there's a lot of times where we sit in the conversation. I'm like, all right, have you got a Dreyfus database? Has it been connected to Dreyfus? Has it synced? Have you got any of this stuff? And they're like, no, no, no. I'm like, well, you're only giving me ticks in my corner at the moment because all that stuff. And they're like, oh, but it's not pretty enough. And I'm like, yeah, but how many hospitals have you done? They're like, oh, maybe 4 or 5. I'm like, 30, 40 currently. Like it's it's not one or two. It's a lot. And these are all from like small retrofits where we're just looking after one small mental health room, or major hospitals, and I mean anything in between. Yeah, I mean regional hospitals where it's only 10 beds and maybe 50 rooms total. It's a small little building. To anything in between, whether it's retrofitting, upgrading, new build, PPPs. Anything of that, it can be in between. But we say to them, well, I mean, I'm happy to use your content, happy to use your standards, happy to use anything you want, but here are the time draws of where it's going to fall down. And if we don't look at them right now, um, it's up to you as of such, and it's going to be your call into terms of how we do it and how we go about it and how we challenge it. And I say to them, I say, yeah, I mean, if we're to redo this work, which we can do for you, like I've got no problem with it, but this is the time it's going to take, and this is going to be charged not on us, like you guys, because we've done it already, we've got it. If you don't want to use ours, fine, no problem whatsoever, but this is what it's going to take for you guys to get it, because it doesn't benefit us, we've done it, benefits your firm. And you've just got to be very communicate well and be very clear in your communication with them that, I mean, this one task might take 100 hours, 200 hours to do properly the first time. And have you thought about this? Where's your coding structure? Like, you're really getting into integrities of someone else's systems and standards, and making sure that it all matches up. And then a lot of the times they have great grand ideas, but they fall over because they've forgotten about the most simple thing of, I mean, lightweight content. A lot of our content isn't very flash. It looks very boring. It's a box, but it's coded correctly. It has the right information, and that's all we care about. We don't care about the pretty picture, because we do that in Enscape and other programs where we do the rendering of it, or we don't do it in Revit, and then we use Dreyfus for our information. So it's a very lightweight model so that we can do a lot of things in one model. We don't have to break them out, worry about tagging and managing models and stuff like that. So, I mean, even on Tweed Valley Hospital, we've only got 14 models from architecture, which is, quite good as a such. And yeah, most big hospitals, it's an 8-story hospital. I think it's got about 3,500 rooms total. So, quite, I think it's 80,000 square meters, I think, from memory. Don't quote me on that, but again, only 14 models, and one of them's a core model, one of them's a site model, one of them's a facade model. So like the holistic of it, we try and keep it. And yeah, I mean, in our building models, it has everything for that building. It has the walls, the floors, the rooms, the doors, the FF&E, because it's by keeping it all together. It helps all our staff be quite proficient on it and working instead of separating all those items out. You might have an FF&E model and a room model, and I mean, Dreyfusson has a hissy fit because the room isn't in with the FF&E and the door isn't in there, and trying to do all systems and procedures with it all gets quite challenging. But by having it all in one and thinking about that model setup with, you know, in the likes of the guys at Batesmart saying, hey, this is what we've done, this is how we've done it, this is what's worked before, this is the model size that we'll probably get to. And yeah, I mean, I sat with Mark very early on and we did that breakup, and then we showed it to everyone, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we get that. And even to this day, people aren't going to me, oh, the model's out of control, I can't open it. It's usually they go, oh, my model's not open. It's like, all right, have you updated BIM 360 connector? Have you done the app? Have you done this? These are your updates. Have you done all this? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, you've been on holidays for 2 weeks. You've missed the last update.
Yep.
You haven't done it. That's why it's not open. They go,
Yep.
oh, there's no one saying, hey, the model's out of control. I can't open it ever,
Yeah.
or it's taking me 2 hours to open. It's always, you know what I mean? And that came from really good preparation and planning at the early stages. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we face is setting up these new projects and aligning those goals so that people understand that we're doing this early on because of this reason. We're spending the time up front to do it so that we have the time. It sometimes hurts the project because we don't have that time at that stage to do that, but we've got that time at the later of it, at the later end, to recover that. So we say, look, we'll spend it here, but this is where we'll get reimbursed for it, basically. So you've got to be able to say, we're doing it for this reason, for these reasons, and this is what we'll get out of it. But we won't realise we get what we get out of it till a year down the track, and that's the game we've got to play. We've got to be able to plan a year ahead so that it makes that way.
That is correct. Yeah. So interesting, you mentioned about somebody going away for a couple of weeks and coming back, because that's what I talk about when I talk about model compare feature on cloud. Because if you've been away for a couple of weeks and you want to find out what are the changes that have been made in the project, that's an amazing feature where you could compare two different versions of the model to give you an idea, provided the models have been published timely and so on. And this is where scheduled publishing is a good idea. Now, going away from technology a bit, so what gets Dom to get up every morning and do what you do?
I would say making a change.
I thought you would say money.
No. I joined STH because I actually felt like when I met with Mark and Mark said, hey, you actually make a difference. You don't work for the man, you work for people. And yeah, I mean, you walk into a hospital that you've done and you see kids they could be in some of the most crappy situations. Like I've seen some kids going through some horrendous stuff, but they're interacting with the smart wall that you've put in, or they're playing with, you know, I mean, the little jungle gym they've got in their little ward, and they're, you know, I mean, and they're just smiling and they're happy, even though that, you know, I mean, they could be in some really serious pain or problems, or, you know, I mean, don't have a bright future ahead as of such, and they're happy and they're joyful. And you know, I mean, even seeing that on some of the mature people as well. You know, I mean, doing palliative wards and stuff like that. It's not so much making a difference in terms of you're changing a client's way or you're doing something. You're actually changing the people who use the hospital, and it's not just for a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's for the life of the hospital that you've worked on until we retrofit it again or someone else works on it. You actually, you know, I mean, if you go to, you know, I mean, Women's and Children's Hospital in Melbourne, you get to see that. You get to see that there's a lot of people there that, yeah, I mean, they might be going for cancer treatment or some other treatment, but you actually, with smart design and smart health planning and thinking about the actual end user, you actually make a big difference. And
100%.
Even nurses, with that door we were talking about before, you might necessarily save someone's life without even knowing about it. And it's only until you talk to the nurses about, oh, we did this for this reason. Oh, I'm so thankful for you. Or you mean centralising the nurses stations, which is one of the big things that's happened over the last 5 years, so they don't have to walk 30, 40 kilometres a day and see all the different wards, because every time they see someone, they've got to get back to their central hub. And if that central hub is on one end, they could be going backwards and forwards a kilometre each time they see a patient. They might see a patient every 10 minutes. And it's just like, by centralising it, you've actually saved them that,
100%.
that 800 meters that they're walking, because they're only doing a 100-meter walk to get to the centralized station, so
Yeah.
they can help it. So you're affecting people's lives without actually fully realizing it.
Yep.
And a lot of people at STH go, oh, once they've gone on site and they've seen what we've done and they've spoken to people, they actually get a real profound that they've helped and they've made a difference. So that's what gets me out different. It gets me out of bed every day, is
Fantastic.
making a difference for everyone and helping everyone, because I think it's such a key driver of, I'm not necessarily working for the man or working for the money. It's actually working to make a difference for everyone.
Yeah, that's amazing. It is, what you said is so amazing, and it touches a chord with me because my mom had to go through some stuff, and so did my dad. So I totally understand what you're saying. All right, so now we come to the best part of this podcast: two jokes and a tip section. All right, so you got to tell us two jokes, and you got to tell us a tip. The tip could be technology related, a life hack, or whatever you want. So let's start with joke number one.
Joke number one, I always say that BIM isn't a fad, or BIM isn't a trend as of such, because a lot of the time people call BIM and they just don't get that it's technology. So my joke all around is that BIM isn't a fad or a trend, it's a way of doing work.
Yeah, that's right.
Not really funny, but a lot of people go, BIM and BIM, it's just like they're so close together and they mean the same things. And it's just like, well, you can't really do a process in a bin. So, it doesn't quite work out.
Yeah.
My other joke is always around LOD and level of definition and level of information and those terminologies. And everyone goes to me, I want LOD 500. It's just like, you can have LOD 500, but do you want to pay for LOD 500? Because that's a different conversation.
Yep.
They're like, no, it's just what you're doing. I'm like, no. This is like, show them a chart, show them an image of the different LODs. And they're like, oh. And then you're like, here's the cost. Let's talk about a box or a room. Here's the cost to do it at 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. They're like, why is it so much on 500? I'm like, because you're not realizing what you're actually wanting. So always go, LED 500 is always what we do, but it's not what we charge.
Talking about that, just last week in Brisbane, I got an email saying we need to install latest BIM or something on those lines. Like we need to buy 5 licenses of BIM. Like these days it's still understandable because there was a terminology called BIM 360. So a lot of times people confuse with that. So instead of saying we need 5 licenses of BIM 360 design or something like that, they'll say we need 5 licenses of BIM. But going to 10 years back when BIM 360 did not even exist as a term, or even before that, people would call us and say, oh, I need 5 licenses of BIM.
Well, I need to do BIM. Can you help me do BIM? And it's just
Exactly.
like, are you talking about the software? Are you talking about the process? It's just really one of those funny things that people just, till this day, and people don't know what BIM is. And I have to tell them that it can mean 2 different things depending on what you're talking about. It could be building information modeling or building information management. What are you referring to? Is it a client requirement? Is it that? And until you break that down, and everyone goes to me, I'm doing LED 500. I'm like, have fun with that, because I know what that entails, and unless you've written it clearly, it's not. So even to this day, I always tell clients it's LED 300. It's what you need and it's what you want and it's what we're happy to do, and we do that as a base level. We don't go above it. We don't go below it. We've had both times where we've had clients tell us to do above and below, and we've pushed back and said, no, it's not why. Like, what's your industry? Oh, it's just what the industry wants. And I'm like, but why? Like, challenge why. Don't be afraid to ask why. And I'm not against confrontation, but it's just saying why for what reason.
100%.
And having that information with them. And then my tip is plan. Always plan, always be willing to sit down for half an hour and talk to someone about planning and preparation for a project. I think that in all my time at STH, it's one thing we do really well. We're not afraid to take an hour out of everyone's day and go, how can we do this the best way possible? And not be willing to, I might not know it, but, someone who's a grad or a student go, hey, have we thought about this? And it's just like, no, I haven't. That's a really good idea. Well, let's work that in. How do we grab that idea and evolve it so that we can work it into a plan and work it into it? And I've always said to everyone, I said, no idea is too stupid, no idea is too smart. Say it, because we all might be thinking it, but we might not know how to communicate it well. But if you can say it and we can talk about it and learn from it, well, then that's the best thing. And yeah, I've forgotten the 5 Ps. Someone always told me, but there's a swear in it, so I don't really say it. But yeah, planning and preparation for a project is one of the best things you can do in the
Fantastic.
BIM process. Is take that time to just step back, talk about it, be willing to say, don't do this or do this, or this is the best way, and be willing to have anyone challenge you on that. And don't be afraid that they're challenging you for a bad reason. They're challenging you to try and help and understand and get through it all. So yeah.
Yep, brilliant. We are almost out of time, so I just want to say a big thank you to Dom. I know
No problem.
he's traveling right now, and it becomes really hard, especially when you're sitting in a room to talk about all of that stuff. But I really appreciate you being on this podcast. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't want to talk much about technology, although we did talk a bit about technology because you can take a person out of technology, but not a technology out of person.
That
So
person.
thanks for being on this podcast. We really appreciate that. Thanks, Tom.
No, thank you, Deepak. Thanks for the time. It's always fun to catch up and have a chat.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Dom, again. So, to our audiences and our viewers, I just want to say we spoke to Dom about what gets Dom out of bed and do what he does. And it definitely struck a chord with me when he talked about how the hospitals that he helped design not only just help the doctors and nurses, but also the people using the hospital, not only for next 2 years, 5 years, but throughout the lifespan of that hospital. So that actually is a really, really cool thing to do. So thank you, Dom, for what you do. And thanks again for being on this podcast.
No problem. Thanks, Deepak. Much
Yeah.
appreciated.